assessment to all the properties along the road for a bike path.
Yeah.
We've never done that before, and I don't know that
If it
that
would
is
fit into
legal.
the model that we have
Well,
in place.
I'm not sure it's legal. I mean, if,
Could it be all Tom Nevers, or would that not even work?
well,
No.
As a bike path,
there's
you
a
can't do it anymore.
statutory reason for betterments, which is improving, typically a road.
Mhm.
I'm just not sure if a bike path falls in the category of being able to assess one. So that's a thing that I will check on.
Mhm.
The Howman Pond Road people raised on their own about $150,000, and then there was the private donation. So that might speed things up, but
I suggested both of those
yeah, okay.
options for them to explore.
Like the engineering cost part, something like that
Right, okay.
could be that.
Yeah,
So maybe, what do you guys think about this? We take kind of a parallel track than we just discussed with Low Win It, but instead of grant funding, it's potential donations or betterment. It goes in the hopper, and it's a little looser. We're trying to determine to what extent we would get some type of supplemental funding. And we would be pinning that down for our final report. And then go from there.
I think that's good. I mean, we're getting to the end of Bike Pass. We're getting to those out year ones that have been.
Yep, this one's been around for quite a while.
No, but I'm talking about the ones that we have to do versus the ones that are sort of
I got
the
you.
dreamy ones
Yeah,
out in
yeah.
the middle of nowhere.
No,
We
I
got
got
to
you.
eventually
Right.
do them. Quidnet's not even on here, but that's something's going to happen there someday.
Okay, so, I guess we're gonna proceed that way with no one opposed. Supplemental funding, okay. We're down to, police and, marine, the Harbor Master Industry Road Layup Yard and Workshop. We don't have our Rories. That was a project that was discussed last year. There's another, project we don't have a Rory for yet. I would like to suggest that we complete our Rory for the sake of having the information. But Harbor Master Industry Road, we can just discuss and decide if we're gonna put it in the hopper or not.
I did talk to the deputy yesterday. He didn't, and about people hearing that it might be go out to 21, and he hadn't heard or discussed that with anybody, so he's not sure.
Okay,
It was his understanding it was still moving forward, but
I think the reason we had made a note to confirm we were moving forward with this year was we didn't have a SIP request form, but they did provide the SIP request form, so we knew.
okay.
Is there anyone who has questions on that topic, which we've previously discussed the last 2 years, just so we're, it's not a new topic is what I'm trying to say. Is there anyone who feels that we shouldn't put it in the hopper?
Do we think that 495,000 is still an accurate number?
They resubmitted the SIP request form. It was not updated, but I presume they reviewed it on just, it was dated December 6th, but we received it in our packets.
I just found the one that we had on file for that. It wasn't a new.
Oh, that wasn't from them with the
SIP
memos?
bill. No.
Oh,
They base their cost, if you look, if I'm correct, they base their costs on a similar building.
Yeah, I remember that.
but didn't the auxiliary building at the fire station get based on that same similar building, and now that's an
Yes.
additional 3 million?
Yeah.
No, I think, I would want to double check, but I thought the layup building was based on the community sailing building next door.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
Yes,
it was
You're right.
more.
And that's not what the
You're right.
auxiliary
You're right.
was based
you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so, is there anyone who feels that we shouldn't move forward with putting that in the hopper? And we can discuss it.
Is it, it's not showing phased, is it?
No.
No.
on.
I mean, the idea for me that was attractive is it's better utilizing staff on a year-round basis. They're able to get inside and do work that they can't normally do, which frees them up to do stuff during the seasonal time that it's at least temperate weather to be outside doing things they need to be doing, and it's less of a crunch.
I agree with that.
I mean, it just seems like it's a good management, and for what it is, a relatively inexpensive number.
Yeah, for that cost, it feels like it's worth it.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna hopper that. The public safety auxiliary building, we have down as a, under our average from 1.5 to, there's a prior approved 1.5. The request for this fiscal year is 3 million in order to complete what I understand to be an expanded scope.
Did you get the memo from the deputy too? That was forwarded, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
The only concern I have, well, look, I think, well, I'm not gonna make a comment until other people comment. We'll see where people are. Is there any discussion on that?
I mean, that's a lot of equipment that's going in there.
Yeah.
And this was heated,
It's
and
significant.
this is why this is more. This was gonna be, heated and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, the only concern
Fancy.
I have then is that the fire chief had mentioned, Chief Murphy had mentioned that maybe there would be bays for vehicle maintenance. They were gonna be bringing the maintenance in-house. And I didn't see that in the description, and it's it's not a minor concern, but I think it's a valid one. That is that part of what the $3 million increase includes? For, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, my understanding about the $3 million increase is more that the cost overall has been increased based on costs of the current project. And the alternate bid that came in for this, when we put the fire station out to bid, was well over 1.5 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was closer to almost 3.5.
And so
million,
that's
I
why,
think.
and it couldn't even fit into the bid anyway.
We put this out separately after the fire station had been done.
It was-
And
Right.
it came back at,
Yeah, I remember going to
Almost
FinCom
$3
and
or
talking
$4
to them
million,
about
so-
getting it approved.
But
For
this
the-
whole thing with doing the maintenance of the fire trucks, that's an ongoing discussion we're having with the chief. He's put in some requests in his operating budget to hire a mechanic.
So that's not resolved.
No, it's not.
Okay, so I had the wrong impression on that.
well, but you'd also have to look at even the fact that if we had an off-island person come here to service the truck, they're still gonna need a place to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So this facility that it's been talked about since I got here and we started down the fire station road.
Right.
Has probably just maybe changed a little bit of what everybody intended to use it, but I don't know that it's changed substantially from what was originally intended
Okay.
when it started.
So the only thing I would like to suggest is that we make sure that, well, I have a question about the dollar numbers, but with respect to a recommendation, we make sure that it's equipped, with respect to the build out, it's equipped for vehicle maintenance for the needs of the fire department. And if, it comes to pass, the police department
Yeah.
or whoever they decide to have in there. And then Brian, with respect to the dollar number, and it may be, guys, it may be that that's already in there. It's just, it wasn't listed as like a line item in the description. You had mentioned that the bid came in at 3.5.
I think it came in more. I don't remember the number exactly off the top of my head, but
Did it come in at 4.5? Because we're asking for 3.
I think it came in at just something above 1.5, but a little less than 3. And we're asking for 3 because now we're months away. That's behind us by months. So the prices are only going up.
Right. But can we put that in the hopper, make the recommendation, get clarification that it includes the maintenance, some type of maintenance bays, and get a clarification on what the final number is that will work into the final report, Brian and Libby?
Yeah.
Libby and Brian? Okay.
Yeah.
Just because if it's not 3, I think it's certainly a more palatable dollar number if it's lower.
I mean, we've been talking about putting equipment indoors for a long time,
Mm.
and unfortunately, we're in a period of high construction costs, and,
Yeah.
but at some point, we've just gotta do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's got to be done, and otherwise we're just throwing good money after bad when we're investing in vehicles, and those vehicles are expensive. Okay, great. So we're down to school, and the land acquisition, we're going to do
I think we should,
an individual recommendation to see if the concept can be advanced on a townwide basis.
I think we should follow what Brian suggests on this.
Which is what?
I'm not sure yet, but we've talked about it, but it's not that easy, and there has to be a way to, think we should just, you know, develop a plan through finance to figure out how to do this. Make it
But are
possible.
we talking about land
Land.
acquisition?
Talking about the land in between the, you know,
That,
over
what I put on the table was that we make an individual recommendation to advance the concept as a discussion matter, as a townwide policy. That's what I'm suggesting. Not suggesting
No,
that we
that's
bring
good.
that through
Okay.
you, which I wouldn't think of it any other way, through Libby and
The
Brian.
concept of having some money to purchase land when it becomes available, is that? what
Yeah, how the
For
mechanism, how it would
municipal
work.
strategically, like,
Yeah.
we know that what we're talking about over there, like, there may be another spot on the island similar. Not like the real estate
No, I know. I mean, it's
fund
just- we've
for
gotta-
other things. This is different. This is like, okay, the campus, you know. I'm just trying to.
Internally, we have to discuss A, the validity, and B, the exact mechanism to be able to accomplish it and do it. And
It's,
not
because it's
something-
basically putting some money aside until something's
Rainy
ready to
day.
be purchased, and I don't think you want to identify what it is, 'cause-
Mm-hmm. You're just gonna drive up the price.
right?
Oh,
So, I
Yeah, I
mean,
wasn't thinking
there's
of
other
that part.
mechanisms, i.e. authorizing borrowings once it's been done to be able to purchase it. It's not, the only issue we faced is really the time to do it, not the ability to get the money to do it,
and the timing.
the timing to do it.
Is-
But we
yeah.
don't face the issue of not being able to find a way to come up with the money. It's more the timing of being able to accomplish it.
Because, you know, similar to like, when we talk about 2, 4, and 6 fairgrounds, the greatest purchase the town's ever made, in my opinion. It happened, and everybody knew it was the right thing. That land in between the schools, I mean, if you explain it, it is, you know, you have to be living in some other universe to not think it was the right thing. It's just a question of making it happen.
Well,
It's so hard.
but
I
is
just
it
wanna
that-
make
is
it
it
be.
that hard? We're kind of at the point where we're having 2 town meetings a year. now.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna ask
And
you that,
it's
what
a
you think
matter
about
of
that.
About 6 months, really, that somebody would have to wait for a purchase.
So in
to
other
happen,
words, you think
unless
that
there's a,
the 2 meetings a
Telephone.
year, we could even call a special for that, if you had to,
if you had to.
So,
right?
But you have to remember,
Not
that
ideal.
specials require,
Oh,
special
Quorums.
requires quorums for appropriations and.
so this is
Yeah,
where, this is
okay.
why we're not gonna settle it today
Yeah.
or next, but we wanna advance the concept of, we wanna advance it as a concept, recommend that there be discussion, figure out the validity, figure out the mechanism, figure out a way that you can put money down on a piece of property to hold it until the appropriation can be authorized and made. That's the part that's missing, and go from there if that's the discussion.
So you could have some kind of a fund for a deposit.
Yeah.
And you could put down the deposit, but that would be contingent upon town meeting, whatever votes are necessary,
Right.
because it might not just be town meeting, it might be a ballot vote.
No, we can, I mean, there's ways to do that piece of it.
Yeah.
To secure the ability to go out and to potentially do it. The larger purchase, again, is this is a more global discussion, which, as I mentioned before, about how to proceed with these things.
Agree.
Because if we're talking $50,000 for a deposit, say, that could come from the reserve fund.
Right.
But if it's 500,000,
Yeah, and I get Nat's concern, I agree with it. We don't want this wonderful opportunity to escape us because it could save us money down the road, especially when it comes to something like the school, where if you're putting up a new building, then you've got to put up new maintenance facilities for the new building somewhere else, and all the rest, more school buses and all the rest of those
We
things.
also don't want to start putting money away so that the areas that we're looking at automatically know what we have, and we're paying more than we normally would either.
Agree. So I'm just saying, I think we need to come up with a plan.
so that might be a recommendation and.
Our recommendation is, let's come up with a plan that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense and implement it.
Yeah, so we could get a little group together and figure it out for next year.
Yeah, that's,
okay.
as a townwide solution.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
we're not driving prices up. So we're gonna recommend a work group. How's that? Work group is a good word.
Just for that item,
No,
without funding?
I think
Or with?
staff can figure it out. I think they understand. It came in.
I
as
think
a-
I was gonna suggest that we recommend it as a work group, as a concept on a townwide basis versus
Oh,
this particular.
oh, okay.
Because we don't want to be broadcasting it's the school and only the school.
Yeah.
And I think
see
if
what
we
you're
were to fund it, we would need to do it under
No, that's
request.
correct.
So this goes to
I
zero.
got it.
Yeah, this would go to
Because
zero.
This
I agree with
also
that.
potentially might tie in Affordable Housing Trust,
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of all that, you're right.
Maybe.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. That's good discussion. Thank you. The central office edition, more good discussion?
Yeah. And what about the scores from town administration? Didn't we mention that last meeting? There was none, or is that on
We
purpose?
don't, that's on purpose, we don't rank schools.
That's right.
items.
Okay, you said that before. Okay.
We have enough trouble ranking our own items.
Okay, so the prior approve is 550. The original request for this year came in at 5, an additional 5, and subsequently that was increased to an additional 650,000. So the total for that work, if implemented, would be about 1.2. 1.11.
You sure about that?
Well, they've
Is that
got
what-
It'd be 1.1.
They've got
1.1.
1.1.
Cause they got 550 last
1.2.
year for general kind of upgrades and maintenance, right, but not so much in addition, and then that.
No, it
that-
was for the
They
addition.
got
The
it.
550 was originally for the
Or
addition.
was it just cost went up?
Yeah, it would be
Well,
1.2.
I
That's
think
what I
they
thought.
modified it a little bit too.
And it's that, the funding source for that is they can use the borrowing authorization from the intermediate school because it did allow for renovations to other other buildings on the
Money
campus.
left, money left in that.
Can that cover the 650?
Have you clarified what that is?
How much?
It's left.
It's,
Wasn't it 3?
it's it's around 2.5 to 3, so this will cover it, we can cover it.
So do we need to move forward on it here, or
We would,
proof
wouldn't
of
it just,
concept of the funding may be already?
yeah.
The funding's already secured. I think that last year, when they wanted to do it after we had identified that, we asked them to come back to you because we hadn't recommended it originally as part of the fiscal 19 plan. And we continued to work on it because it was important to them. And we identified that the school borrowing article could be accessed for this based on the way it was written. And we asked them to come back to you just to say yes, okay, because it hadn't been recommended. It was okay because we had identified the funding
It's a lot of
source.
money.
So we then said you need to come and talk to them since you are more than doubling what you told them you needed last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what the process that we've,
So where do we stand? They haven't come to us?
They,
well, they did because
they
during
came-
their,
Meeting?
yeah, they
during
came
their
to
budget
us. They
presentation,
presented
they
some
did.
plans.
Yeah.
My concern at that point was just is that it's, they're asking for a slab on grade construction for 1.2 million
Yeah.
to basically renovate and expand a structure. And I think my concern at that point is the basement is the cheapest space. However, understandably, they're looking at phasing and working within a confined space, and doing a basement means moving a structure off and moving it on
Because
and
they don't have
increasing the
basement in the other
cost.
one.
So it's trying to present both sides of the coin. And I think there were some other comments and concerns about HVAC that they addressed.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a pretty decent length discussion about it, covered a lot of ground. And it's,
The Rory went from 34 up to 48%, just in since we last looked at it.
yeah. So we got more
Input.
input,
Just as a,
and it came in
Comment.
for you.
do we have a feeling on when we'll have a new superintendent? Is that fair? I mean, we're assuming we're shooting for September. Earlier.
This spring or early summer.
They're out
Do we
now.
think any of this operationally ties the hand of the new person where they may say, well, I think it's ass backwards or
If
sideways?
that happens, I'm resigning.
Yeah.
I've been in love with all this.
It's
all
a
this
fair
time.
question, because you do have a
Yeah.
change. You do have a change. And it's
Yeah,
not that we have physical space, but it's the allocation and the usage of the space.
Well, you also have
I-
a new person coming in with a project in process.
Yeah.
Substantial, because it is their offices,
Didn't stop the water company.
Thank you
Wow.
for reminding us, Richard.
I showed up
But
at,
you're sitting right here, this
Yeah.
beautiful table, $50 million
Boom, there goes the
table.
ceiling tile.
Yeah.
very bright. All right, so in the interest of,
I don't think the superintendent thing is, I'm not saying it doesn't matter,
Just
but I
a-
think that the ball is rolling in the direction of that campus with Diane there. It's sort of it's just, the engine's running, there's just somebody gonna be in the driver's seat, but the engine's already running, I think.
I don't disagree with that. And here's that famous but, and I'm just, they're asking to embark upon the athletic complex master plan, which, by the way, I was gonna suggest we remove the word athletic. So it's just, it looks broadly at the whole thing.
Yeah.
But what if, as a result, if we felt a basement was important, they picked up the structure and moved it for 40 grand to someplace else on the property and put a full basement under it at a later date. I'm not saying that that's what they should do. I'm just throwing out ideas on, Peter mentioned a new administrator and made me think, well, maybe this prevents a mistake of building without additional storage space, which we all know is really,
Pretty valuable.
yeah, really valuable. And I'm not suggesting they not do it, but I'm just wondering if they do it as part of the, after they do the first stage of the complex master plan.
My only other thought is wearing the FinCom hat is the last time that they came to FinCom, which was almost a year ago. Open discussion was that we all felt that we were not funding the operational budget enough in relation to what our children were receiving as product. And I cringe to think that we're going to continue to spend and spend and spend on capital asset when some of that, yeah, it does help our children. But I also remember utilization of operating funds to fund capital projects in the school, and I have a major problem with that. So I would recuse myself from the vote, because if I were to vote, maybe I should have said this before I said the word recuse, I would vote against this wholeheartedly. But I'm not gonna vote.
So you just voted.
The thing about the teen center is they've already fixed it up.
There's nothing to do with the teen center.
Okay.
Yeah.
This,
all right,
when we looked at, please jump in.
Yeah.
From a FinCom standpoint, it was all operational budget, which is
Yeah.
the funding of programs and teachers and products and supplies and such. And I just feel that, and I was against this 2 years ago, and now that it's doubled in size and it's gone to a slab on grade, and it just seems to get
The
stickier and stickier.
only comment I would make relative to this, since, they've worked with me on finding the funding sources, is that because this is debt that's authorized and it's an exclusion, it doesn't actually take away from the ability for funding the operating budget at all. It's dollars that are outside of anything that would go towards there, because it's an approved up to 50, 49, whatever million. So I think that the other point is that to be made there is that, they have great latitude within their budget on what they can do, and that is something that the flexibility under the statutes that allows them to do it. We vote a number to them, and they're responsible for allocating it. Whatever those concerns are certainly yours and the FinCom's, but they are allowed to be able to do that. It's not something that they're not allowed to do. It is perfectly within all of the Chapter 70 regulations for them and management of the budget. But with this, it wouldn't have an impact on the operating budget in any way, because it's a debt exclusion, which is raised outside the taxes. And if we didn't spend the money here, granted, the only thing that would happen is the tax rate might not be impacted quite as dramatic, quite as to the point that it would be with this, but this money would just be raised, and then they'd be looking for this all over again to be spending, and would probably be borrowing it again at some other point anyway. So that's the only reason that I kind of recommended that and found that we could use this, because we had the money there. It's not going to impact the operating budget, and they may be back looking for an even more expensive renovation farther down the line, when they might be able to do what they're looking for within that dollars. So that's the only reason that I found this as an acceptable matter.
And that's, and your comments are spot on, excluding the philosophical background.
Right.
It's just pure finance.
No.
Yeah.
Richard?
And agree.
My comment is, I hear the concerns about a new superintendent. I hear the concerns about the type of construction.
Alan?
Ooh.
Help desk.
And
They find you every.
it's what Brian says that sways me to say yes. begrudgingly, but
Okay, can I follow up on that?
sure.
Because, Christie, go ahead and then I'll,
I was just gonna say, do we recall what the discussion was on the slab and why they didn't choose? Was it just costs? And can we just hold this till Thursday? Are we meeting Thursday
I don't believe so.
or not? Okay.
I believe it was
Plan one, but-
cost and also it had to do with phasing, so if they were to have to pick up and, if they were to raise the building, it was gonna, I wasn't quite sure I understood it, so I don't wanna say conclusively.
I think they would have to obviously relocate everybody while the building is up in the air. And
Right, but I think they have to do that in any event, so I thought that there was some other aspect to it with respect to phasing the construction. But typically you would just pick it up, put a foundation under it, set it back down, you don't have to move it. The other opportunity is if it is part of the complex master plan with respect to adding further development of the athletics, and we do have a new administrator coming on, there may be a philosophical change in how they want to approach things and where they want their administrative staff to be, and it could come into play. I wouldn't argue that I don't think we as a community are going to spend the money. However, I just have a tough time if we're putting money into something that we're not trying, even if it costs 10% more, we're not expanding it to its full utility, because once we've spent that money and we've cemented everything in place, literally and figuratively, it's done and we spent the money. And if another $100,000 would have got us a basement and increased our square footage and cubic volume by, a 4-digit number, that's big. Brian, the thing on the tax, did you say it was how much? Approximately 2.5 is left?
Approximately. Yeah.
When do we retire that?
Usually what happens is that we wait for typically about 12 to 18 months, because you still have small punch list items when that's done, and then we go through a year period to make sure that there's nothing that comes up that we're responsible for fixing as part of that. And then we would go and rescind we would go to town meeting and ask town meeting to rescind the borrowing down to the level that we had actually borrowed at, which would remove the ability to spend that other money. So conceptually, we might be thinking about doing a rescission of the borrowing authorization at this town meeting, but I haven't really formulated that thought in my head because this piece has been outstanding.
Right.
Until I get clarity on that, then I would look at where we're at and spending and see if we're done. And if we're done, given that it's been open for a year, I probably would recommend the rescinding any unused borrowing capacity.
So at this point, the 2.5 is just additional capacity. It's not
additional
anything
capacity. It
that's
has not
borrowed.
been borrowed. It hasn't at all. It's just sitting there, and I would have the ability to go to market and access that remaining piece.
I just think that's something we should keep in mind in terms of having that hanging over us. And it's not a piggy bank.
It can actually, please don't forget that any desire to use the money has to come through my office.
No, I
and it
understand
goes
that.
through, and
Yeah.
it has to be vetted against the article, and if we're unsure, we talk to bond counsel to make sure. So it isn't just sitting there to be spent.
Yeah, and I want to be clear in what I'm trying to say there. I'm not suggesting the school looks at it as a piggy bank. I'm just suggesting as a matter of operating practice from the capital side.
Okay.
It's not a good idea, I think, we should be closing that stuff out as just a matter of policy and practice as quickly as possible, even though we're not going to be using it unless it goes through a process. All right, so it looks like we're going to need to do a vote on this.
Can I just ask
Yeah.
one more question, Mr. Chairman? Is it appropriate for this committee to make a recommendation that the school gets a new price for a basement? I'm just saying, I know why they can't put, it isn't that easy. They do have to shore it up. They're gonna have to either sheet pile next to it or something to do it. So they'd have to pick the building up.
Yeah,
They just can't just dig a basement next to a crawl space foundation that's only 4 blocks.
no, I understand
That's
that.
what it is,
But I
'cause I've
mean,
been under it.
I understand that now, but
I'm just saying.
that type of work goes on.
No,
in the
it's
historic
normal
district.
every
It
day. No,
happens
no,
every
no,
day,
no,
so
I didn't
it's
say it
not-
couldn't.
Yeah.
Another $100 grand is like $1.
And
I
I'm
get
not-
that.
And I'm not
I'm
suggesting.
just saying, is that something we should ask them?
I believe we did ask them, and I'm not suggesting
Trying to
that
remember that. I don't.
I'm not suggesting we request that of them.
Yeah.
I was just providing that information in the context of when Peter mentioned that there's a new admin coming on and there might be a change, that made me reconsider where I'd left that, which was that if there is a change, maybe there's a possibility to be doing this work on a full basement, but somewhere else on the site. That worked better
Yeah.
after they do the master plan. It may be not, it may be right where it is, and we ended up spending another, $30,000 or $50,000 because we've waited a year. Or maybe the recession comes and we save a bunch of money. I don't know. I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm trying to articulate what my concerns are, having thought it through. Christie?
I was just gonna say, I mean, if there's, I don't know, I might be wrong, but if there's, if a superintendent's been in place for, 8 years or whatever, I would think they have a better idea about office needs than an incoming superintendent.
Yeah.
And that could be another, 3 years before that even gets determined.
Right.
Got a learning curve.
I mean, regardless, he's gonna come into the position. It's gonna be in probably full construction mode if they, if we do it. But I don't know. When's he start anyway?
Who?
When would the new
We don't even know.
He or
next
she,
season? He or she? When will they start?
September.
spring, summer.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be spring, early summer.
If they didn't get.
If they find someone. My only response to that, Christie, is more that someone's gonna be walking the door to literally their central office being ripped apart and rebuilt as they're trying to get their feet under them for the next successful 3 to 5 years as the superintendent of the school.
Things are not gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
No.
So in any event,
Here, I'm sorry. What?
No, I said things are not gonna fall apart.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've trusted Michael's opinion throughout his whole time here.
Oh,
So
right.
I mean, that's weighing in a little bit for me.
Oh, I've always trusted.
yeah, I don't think anyone's not trusting them. Our role is to look at, are the dollars being spent the way that we as a committee feel is appropriate in a long-term plan, including taking into context what future needs are. That's what the planning part is about.
Yeah.
So I think we talked about this one enough. We
Yeah.
got a lot to still do. Peter, you're recusing.
Yeah, I have to.
Okay, fair enough. Those in favor to approve,
A lot.
Aye.
I have to.
to put in the hopper as a recommendation?
Aye.
3, 4.
Okay, so it'll be 4-2 with one recusal.
What was the vote on that? Was
4-2
4-2.
to go into the hopper?
Yeah.
Yep.
and one recusal. Okay, thank you guys. We're not always going to agree on stuff, but it's good that we have discussion and we try and vet things out. It helps us to, understand how others approach things on other projects. So I appreciate your investing the extra 10 minutes in that one. We are going to do a quick skip over fire. Those
Yeah.
were all in the hopper. Our island home, there was a question whether the flooring was a legal requirement. There was a
Yeah.
request for $250,000 for flooring. And
Any answer to that?
I can't find any legal requirement.
yeah, I didn't think it was.
Right.
Okay, so that's not a legal requirement. Is there discussion on that?
No.
It's above our
Should.
ratio, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's.
it switched, so it's above our ratio.
Yeah.
So Hopper, okay. I would like to ask though, where has the work group met recently? I know you
Meeting
are
today.
gonna be getting started.
Meeting today. Meeting today with a conference call with the consultant, followed by some architects making a visit.
Okay, and do you feel that there's, I guess, Libby, the question for you, not to put you in the hot spot, but we're gonna put $250,000 into flooring in the facility. We're thinking we're either gonna renovate that or we're gonna reuse it. Our island home is gonna stay there, is the intention?
That's the intention, and the review right now is what's it gonna take to keep it at the site with either a new building or a renovation, but we're years away.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure, how long, okay. So we're thinking that we're gonna get some utility out of this for 3 years at least?
At least.
At least 3 to 5. Okay, that makes me feel better because I was going to suggest we not put it in the hopper. That was going to be my vote. Okay, Wanacomot Water, and Sconset Water are in the hopper. The airport, there are there's a couple in the hopper and a couple that were not. The ones that were not were the ecological restoration equipment, which is basically, grubbing and clearing for the runways. That is actually in the SIP request form is a legal requirement. Taxiway Echo was low in our rankings. That is also a legal requirement. And the security project was initially low in our rankings. That's also a legal requirement. The last two, security project and taxiway Echo, came up above the average. So I'm going to suggest, if there's no discussion, that all three go in the hopper. Okay.
Jim, how much of the taxiway echo is paid by the FAA?
I believe it's
95.
90.
it's a split with the state too, right?
The taxiway echo is
5.5.
90% federal. There, because this is part of a special FAA authorization, there's still a question about whether the state is actually has an obligation to match or not, or will match. So the maximum exposure I believe that the airport has would be 10%, potentially down to 5% if the state ends up matching at that normal level.
This is one of those cases where we borrow it, but then we get reimbursed.
Right, so we would authorize the full borrowing, and we would borrow it in stages, get reimbursement to be able to pay back, and then ultimately permanently borrow what the town share was.
Okay, thank you. That leaves the maintenance vehicle replacement. That is set up as a recurring, it's a 14-year-old vehicle that they're looking to use, replace with new. It was originally 43%, it stayed at 43%, so it's a topic of discussion. Is there any concern about putting that in the hopper?
I can't remember this conversation.
Network infrastructure, ISGIS, the e-permitting went from 25% to 41%, so it would, as an average, fall into the topic of discussions. Any discussion on that?
And I just made a quick comment at the last meeting that I didn't understand what this was really about until I asked, and it's kind of seems like it makes a lot of sense what I've been told, just like some of the other stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
With improvements to the GIS, improvements to data, just new stuff, new things that make more sense. I mean, I don't know how to explain it.
Well,
But
ideally,
you know what I mean.
I know what you
That's
mean, and
what I'm
ideally
saying.
it'll cut down on personnel costs and or
There's a
just
lot,
make
and
things
this
more
is sort of
efficient.
like what happened with consent stuff 5 years ago that started.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a computer thing. It was just a new way to go a little faster with certain things. This is similar, I think, to that.
Okay, so we're down to, thank you, Nat. We're down to sewer. The
Mr. Chairman, did the e-permitting get into the hopper?
it did.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Nat. The sewer, we've got a few that were up for discussion. The perimeter fencing. So
Libby had a good explanation last meeting for this.
yeah, and I got some numbers on that. Can I?
Yeah, I've asked David about this a few times, and he's been in and out of the office this week, so he probably hasn't totally been down. He gave me a number for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I said, but what about the number for just the buildings?
Okay, so
That I don't have yet.
I didn't know that, so I called him to pin him down,
Okay.
just because I know he's busy running around doing stuff, and I know you're busy too. It works out to be about at $80 a lineal feet, which is the comparable. It works out to $500,000 to do the entirety of the property. I asked him about the idea. I thought it was a good solution to do the front buildings for security purposes and put up signage at the beds. He actually said, please don't do that. Please, if you're going to put up fencing, put it up around the beds, the 3/4 exposed sides, because that's his biggest concern is the beds. So the best laid plans. The number for that is $340K. So you got about $160,000 swing, and then if you were to do the front half eventually, $160,000 swing, a future cost, and remobilizing. So the difference would be approximately $500K to do the entirety approximately 340K just to do the bed, the 3/4 sides, the exposed sides of the beds.
So just do the whole thing then.
I'm thinking,
Is he worried about like people drowning in the sewer beds or squid
That,
sand?
dogs,
I-
I mean,
I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be,
no, he's,
gross, but I'm
disagree
just
with it.
asking, because
I-
we've never, ever heard of any of this for
Exactly.
years.
I think David is,
Sewer beds have been there longer than all of us, I can tell you that.
I think David is trying to bring the facility up to industry standards. He is attending these, courses, and he's learning, and he sees that there's potential issues. And if someone falls in there, what's the
Liability for the
likelihood?
town.
It's probably 1 in a million, but if it happens,
Just like
it's
a
$500,000 well invested, is what he's thinking.
Yeah. I understand why he's saying not to do just the buildings.
Yeah.
This isn't security like a bank.
yeah, like,
It's
what
a
are we worried
security
people doing to the buildings? Are
Yeah.
stealing rotting
There's
equipment?
somebody out
no
there-
one's going out there.
Well,
The
they-
trucks have to go out there at odd hours.
They-
The companies that.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
go
whoa,
out
whoa,
there.
whoa, whoa, wait. We're not, he's not talking about new gating systems or
I
anything.
know.
He's got his gate in place. They have a system on how they access and they leave and all the rest of it. His concern is that they have equipment out on the grounds and it's not in a garage, and this is cheaper than a garage, by the way, and it's protected.
Yeah.
There's generators, there's a lot of really expensive, good equipment out there.
Yeah.
And his concern is that it be protected. So I wanted to look into it and get the numbers, because the big question we've had over the 2 years we've been discussing this is, what is the numbers?
Mm-hmm.
So we have the numbers. It works out to be about 500K for the entirety, 340 for just the bed areas. What do we think as a group in terms of proceeding with it?
It's a good question.
I-
But once we do it, we have to do it from now
I
on.
would say, I agree that,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to, this is an all or nothing type of thing, in my opinion. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, this isn't like the building with the basement. This is either do it or not.
I agree.
You said he's concerned about the beds.
He's concerned about the security of the facility, of the whole facility, and he's concerned about liability with the beds. I don't want to keep discussing that.
I know.
That's just stupid.
Sounds like he's
No, not just, like,
But it's
why-
true though. I mean, it's something no one ever thought about till he mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's never even been discussed before, I don't think.
It's a lot of money, but it's a relatively short investment for what it might save us as a town. That's my only concern.
Are we deciding to
Yes.
put it in the hopper or?
We're
decide
deciding to put it in the
recommend?
hopper, yeah.
So I think we should put it in the hopper, but I think if we get down to like 10 things that we really
Yeah,
are having
Yeah.
a hard time with,
Yep.
this would be one that
An
I
out
might
year.
X off versus
Yeah.
something else that's more important, but I think
Yeah.
it should go in the hopper.
That's
I-
a good way to put it.
I appreciate that,
Yeah.
Jason, thank you. Is there any concerns with approaching it that way?
Putting it as full funding?
We'll put it in the hopper for funding the full
Give us
property.
some options.
And then when we do a final review, if we're down to the nitty gritty, we can reevaluate that along with some of the other ones.
If we need to save 160 grand.
Yeah, if we need $160,000 out of our $1.2 million budget. But no, it makes sense to approach it that way.
1960.
Okay, so we'll
Mr. Chairman, I
yes.
have a question on the National Grid L8 feeder project area
Yep.
sewer replacement.
yes, that's
In or
our
out?
next topic.
Is that in or out?
That I think is
We're waiting for a meeting with National
Town
Grid.
manager.
They've been somewhat delayed with their other whatever's going on in Island, and most recently they've said they want to do above the ground.
Right, so if they go above the ground, does this go away?
Yes. What I was trying to find out from David and Mark and Rob though was if they're doing it above ground and they're disturbing any of the areas along the route, it doesn't make sense for us while the areas are disturbed to do any of our work at the same time. I'm still waiting to hear back on that.
has that
I don't
area
think
been
it'd be 6.5 million.
is that area? Do you know if that area's been scoped for the CMOM yet? Through the CMOM? You know, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily know that offhand.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, I
I
was
can
just
find that
curious.
out though.
Well, that when you find out if they want to do work there, that's how they're going to know. So it's
Yeah.
fine. No additional lifting needed there. So the suggestion would be, pretty clearly we have that as requirement or worthwhile slash requirement if LA were to go through with National Grid, if they didn't go above ground. So we would put it in the hopper, contingent upon additional information. If they are gonna go above ground, then we'll find out what costs may be associated with work that's required. Okay. Jetties Beach was road source, that was, okay, there were 3 other items for discussion that are borderline on a rank. One is replace loader, one is replace 1-ton truck, and one is new excavation equipment.
As I recall, town admin had a reason for the low score. I think it was another machine or
It's the loader.
something. Yeah. What was that, Libby?
I think our reasoning was they want, if I'm recalling correctly, they wanted the loader because they were sometimes having difficulty getting a contractor. So they just want to have their own loader so they don't only have to call a contractor. And we said, okay, well,
Can
at
they
least we
get
might have to call the contractor.
Can they get one from the DPW and the DPW gets a new one?
They
and they
do, I believe they do.
Borrow
that they share
There's
right
some
now.
sharing already. And
Yeah.
it's like
Just
2
asking.
kids with a
Yeah.
play loader.
Yeah,
I understand.
because DPW has in for a loader too.
That's why I said it.
So it's
Yep.
the loader at 19, the excavation equipment at 19, and the 1-ton truck at 29.
We'll submit it.
Pardon me?
We'll submit it.
Omit it.
Omit it.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought a minute.
Oh,
A minute?
Well, if it's- Sounds like it's.
So these sound like they're gonna be an out-year recommendation?
I'd be okay with moving into an out year.
he'll find a used one.
So the 2 19s and the 29s out years?
Yes. At this point,
All right.
if the town wins the lottery, we can revisit it. Look, I just want to say, I get what David's trying to do out there.
Yeah.
He's, and it's not dissimilar to what the DPW is doing. You know, Nat has said when he liked that word, the reset, and really trying to make it a professionally run, efficient organization by having the equipment they need when they need it. But we also have a lot of other expenses, and unfortunately, a lot of those are really big ticket dollar numbers. So it's crowding out some of these smaller ones that aren't extreme necessities. All right, we're down to town admin. I want to remind you, we still have to do the fleet management under DPW. So, town admin, we had for discussion the seasonal employee housing feasibility study. I'd just like to make a blanket statement. Anything we're spending money on planning on, we're spending money to plan, I think is important, because they're planning expenditures. So, I mean, I know that's obvious, but
Like modeling?
we had some really low rankings in this category, and for me, it was a concern because I think money we can spend to articulate what our needs are and what those costs will be over the 10-year plan it's just money well spent, as long as it's a reasonable scope of work. So having said that, we have the seasonal employee housing feasibility study. Is there any further discussion, or put that in the hopper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Town pier is already in the hopper. Traffic modeling, hopper?
Is that the latest score, Rebecca?
Yeah.
After my plea last week?
Yeah, it
That's
was.
still it?
Yeah,
We're
these
thinking
are
of town.
all
Hat
new
hand at
updated.
Is
Little
that your
League.
curve, Nate? Is that your-
Little League getting some quarters.
Got a double bogey on that one.
Well, last night was a perfect example. I don't know what to tell you. It'll just happen or not. I think it's crazy in one way, but I understand why there's a lot of push for it. So that's why I'm trying to be balanced with it. And this is Matt, right? On yours, Matt, for this, yeah. So,
My only concern with it is that it would be a scenario-based modeling. So you set up the infrastructure within the software to make the modeling adjustments, and you can get different results. For
Yeah,
that
no, I
amount of
realize
money, it seems like that's what we're paying for. And that is a very useful tool if it does all the town's major roads and the ancillary roads, because we could be looking at how effective would it be in-house without having to pay a consultant so much? Or I'm not quite sure how that will work.
But I didn't know that's what we would.
But that's what I was thinking
I don't
it
think
was.
we know how we're doing it yet. It could be a consultant. Was it supposed to be? I haven't heard that part yet. I thought it was a consultant or in-house. I didn't think that was determined.
150.
I thought it was a software solution that we were
Correct.
Do
purchasing.
you remember that, Jason? Do you know?
But I don't think we can do it in-house. I don't, we're gonna have to get, maybe we get the software solution, but somebody else is gonna have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we gotta get trained on it.
Right.
I feel like I heard something about getting the software, but having somebody, teach us how to do
Mike.
it.
Right.
Or set it up so that we can do it on our own going forward.
Which is a huge potential savings
Yeah.
because the cost for those traffic studies is astronomical.
Yeah,
And it sounds like we're gonna have a lot more traffic studies in our future.
yeah.
Okay, I'm not making a case. I'm
No, I agree.
well, I
with
guess
you.
I am.
You are, though.
I am.
You're sort of making
I am.
the
I
case
got to it. I didn't
why
mean
I
to
get
be.
frustrated with
Hey,
it because it's
That's what, yeah.
trying to appease a different mindset, and it ends up being like you look like a moron trying to appease them.
Well, you can't be blamed for trying that. Traffic modeling. Is there any one who doesn't want to put that in the hopper?
I mean, geez, the percent says absolutely not put it in, but.
Yeah.
This might be one of those cases where our percents fall outside of the beneficial use of the
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
request,
Yeah.
which.
Well,
I mean, it's,
because it falls into maybe three categories. It falls into infrastructure improvement
Indirectly.
as a capital cost, and I could see an argument. I can see where it would be a low in the rankings
Right, exactly. There's a
in
lot
the
of
prior
indirect
overlay. Yeah,
benefits, but,
it doesn't save energy costs. Okay, so we
I'm okay if it goes, I mean, I'd be fine if it went in, if we
Same.
need to revisit based on.
yeah, this can be another one
Funding.
that if we need to.
Yeah.
Wow.
we're out of money.
It's not much money, I think.
And there's one other category I wanted to mention if we're out of money. I don't want to raise the ire, but the other was townwide document management solution,
That's like the e-permit.
and that is right
Right.
now on the border. It's 0.7%, and coastal resiliency are both 0.7% under our average. With the change, our average is 53.7. So again, I would probably
Well, the coastal
Lobby for
resiliency is
that.
state mandated, isn't it, Libby?
just
Now?
based on
Well,
the
it's not-
Kind of.
percentage.
Yeah.
Put it in if we
No.
if we're
No,
looking
but
for scraps, we
So,
pull
There
it
may
out.
be things in the plan that
What do you
at
think?
some point become state
yeah,
mandated.
I mean,
Yeah. That's what I
Yeah.
kind of figured.
that's it.
So Hopper, and if we need to revisit, look, any of these can be revisited if we're running, if we feel like when we look at the dollar number at the end, it's gonna be almost without question over $86 million, and it's likely gonna be more, depending on what happens with capping the landfill and the L8. So, we can revisit
So we're
these.
hoppering the
Hopper,
documents and the resiliency, right?
I believe so. Is
Yeah.
there anyone who would prefer not to do that?
Can I just ask
Yes, please.
the
Richard.
administration a question? Why are you so lukewarm on the document management solution? Is there some misgivings you have?
No, I think it was just that it's a lot to manage, and we had some money. Already.
We're doing a test now.
Libby, is that going to help you with?
I would probably move it up if I did it all over again a little bit.
Still can.
Is that going to help you complying with public records if you've got all that stuff digitized
Well,
eventually?
Yeah.
Easier.
Yeah,
Public
but
record
I would
requests.
say somewhat.
somewhat.
If
From
we had
my
to go-
perspective, yes, because rather than having to go,
Right.
if you don't mind if I jump in.
No,
like,
please.
rather than having to go dig through, like,
Mhm.
does anybody know if that's in a box somewhere? If you could just search for it,
Right.
Yeah.
It's
it
the
would be.
future.
That's what I thought.
I mean, you gotta go
So
with the
from that
new stuff
perspective, I would
with
say.
some things.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I throw a couple
Yes.
things in there? We do have a chief technology officer now,
Mhm.
and having her here makes you feel more comfortable doing these type of things, even if it's not exactly under her purview. I would put it there.
Mhm.
And if you take a little tour of the third floor of 16 Broad Street, there's about 500 boxes of papers. That should be.
Please don't go up there.
Should be in the cloud
Is
somewhere.
there anything like
Are we gonna
that?
need someone from 1960
Find your way out.
for a public records request? Probably not, but it would be nice to have everything digitized, and it can be done, it's not easy.
And then, Jason, I agree with you. I mean, just take a stroll through the back of the Plus building and look at information that's really important. I guess the question I have on this is, and I presume that it's gonna be, most recent in set up so that, we're doing it currently on a department by department basis as a
We're
test?
doing it, yeah, there's a pilot with health, I think, and, hopefully that will be successful and they'll expand it.
Okay, and then the only thing I would suggest in terms of usefulness would be that if it were deployed, once the architecture's been validated, it's deployed in such a way that all new records are going in, if it's feasible, with the different departments, so that it's immediately usable, and then they're backfilling with the archives of, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 100 years ago. Okay, so that's Hopper. Coastal Resiliency Plan is Hopper. I think I can safely make that declaration. The meeting room trailer and are we still lumping meeting room trailer and central fire station reuse as holds?
Yeah, we get
You
Baxter
don't do
Road.
that?
No.
Baxter Road.
Baxter Road's Hopper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that went in.
Oh. Okay.
The meeting room trailer and the central fire station reuse, we downgraded a little bit pending the review of the Affordable Housing Trust to use that for housing.
And they had, 90 days from 3
Yeah.
weeks or a month ago or
Yeah,
something?
they're sometime in, mid-January.
So this is likely would be either a special town meeting request for the next. This isn't gonna be enough, even if it were, are you thinking you'd bring this as an FY20 after the fact? Do you want that flexibility?
You're talking
Well,
about
it
just the
would
meeting
be,
trailer?
I mean, I guess we felt like that would be a nice to have,
Okay.
but is it absolutely critical to?
Okay, no,
If-
I'm
if
just
the
trying to figure out how
housing-
I should
yeah,
proceed
no.
at this moment.
We talked, we go around and around about this, because if the housing group comes back and says, yes, this would be good site for housing, we wanna work on a plan, it's still going to be 2
Years.
or 3 years before they're able to actually implement something. However, it's going to be some amount of time before we can reconfigure the fire station and put a meeting trailer there also.
Mhm.
And then, so we get it all set up, we have 2 to 3 years, and then what? Those departments need to go somewhere, and we haven't revived our discussion about the ultimate home for municipal offices.
And you've probably thought about this, but I'd like to understand if you have if it turns out that they say, yes, we'd like it, and the select board say, yes, then we think that you should have that as a resource. What about not using the meeting trailer at this point, and in the interim, using the firehouse as the meeting space with no, minor or no modifications for the 2 years?
Yeah, that's possible. There would have to be some very minor modification. I don't even know what
Okay.
the number would be, but
Okay, but having floated that, can we then proceed with, what I'd like to do is proceed with whether we feel that these should be recommended as opposed to in the hopper, because these are gonna come later on, so that our town administrator has the information, and we'll actually determine whether we believe the meeting room trailer should be recommended if it can be used at that location, and to study the central fire station reuse. What we're doing is, what I'm suggesting is we vote on it as if affordable housing doesn't go there, so that Libby has that information in hand without us having to reconvene. If you don't feel comfortable with it, that's fine. We can always reconvene in January for a meeting to discuss it. But I think there might be some utility if we support it, that we let her know that
We should
now.
support,
know.
this is my personal opinion, we should support the meeting trailer and potential use of the fire station for meeting, at least temporarily, because we're gonna wear out their welcome over here.
Yeah.
Last night, I got asked, can we meet over here at night? I don't even know if you can meet here at night, can you? Has anyone answered that yet?
Open, right?
No, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're running out of space, and we haven't even lost it yet, the training room. What was the plan for the trailer, Libby, after it's, I hate to use this term useful life, but whatever.
It had a couple of applications.
It has
Potentially
something,
go
right?
To DPW for when they get their ultimate thing.
The
That's
school
thing.
central office edition?
Well,
sorry.
Maybe
Jeez.
school,
Bad
maybe
story.
if we
Portable
ever
basement.
get a municipal office situation, it could somehow.
Because,
be
I mean,
used.
that to me is really
I'm gonna
important.
get to you. I
Yeah,
just
It
we
doesn't
keep-
sound like a
Yeah.
lot of money to buy that trailer. If
Yeah.
it can be used somewhere else,
It can be used somewhere
that's
else. I mean,
huge.
it can't be
This
moved
one?
around a lot.
Yeah.
But
Christie,
we're not gonna go back to the high school cafeteria like the old days. I just don't see it happening. It's different now. Everything has to be televised. It used to be up there all the time for planning meetings, and it's just, kids are coming in and out, no one cared. It's not gonna be like that anymore. So I
Chris?
don't see it.
Libby, what's the intended use for the old, well, what would be the old Saltmire Center?
Another good question.
unknown right now.
Yeah.
There's some different ideas floating about. One of them is just demolish and use it for parking. One of them is demolish and sell. I don't think we would reuse that building for any real actual purpose because of its location and its condition.
and,
It's a shell.
and
It's a-
that's
it's a
what,
It's too
strong
bad.
building. It's a strong building.
yeah.
You can't, I don't
Fur.
know that it can really be moved.
And that building, but just everyone keep in mind, I was thinking about that too, Christie.
That's a good question.
But keep in mind that that building will be occupied until it's not,
Right.
and then it will be available, but that's at least, I would say, 3 years
Yeah,
down the
right.
road.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the state of people meeting. I know it's kind of tight, but is it at like a breaking point?
It's
Yeah.
it's
It's
getting,
pretty
yeah.
Yes.
It will be when the training room.
There's a
is
lot,
available.
Christie.
Right.
And the training room's already less available. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not available
Ask
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
ask Maria.
And it's
Crazy.
not, yeah, and it's not just a lack of space, it's a lack of adequate space. A lot of the boards, not all, but some of the ones I'm aware of, have big plans and documents, and they need, there's 5 or 8 people on a board or a commission, and they need space to spread out, and we don't have that. The training room is the only
A good
spot
one.
I know of that has that big table capacity. They do have that space over the garage, but I know it can't be made ADA compliant easily. But I think that meeting room discussion is a discussion that our town administrator is looking at clearly in depth and trying to mature it and come up with solutions. What we'd like to do, I think, is indicate whether we support the meeting room trailer as a capital expense and a plan, some studies on the central fire station reuse. Or is that for full conversion? Is that the $250 for conversion to office space if it weren't affordable?
That was for the office space.
Okay, so that's the question on hand. Do you feel comfortable with the question? If not, we can put it off. If you do, let's make a vote. Anyone feel
I'll
uncomfortable?
move to put it in the hopper.
Okay, what I was actually thinking is if we voted, because we're gonna vote the Hopper stuff separately as our recommendation for, I guess we could do it the same. We could just say that if it's not used for affordable housing, then the recommendation is to fund the request. Keep it simple. Okay, so Hopper for both,
Yeah, I would say yes to that.
and I'll just make an individual statement on those two.
Which both?
Uh,
Trailer
yeah.
and the reuse.
And that would be with respect to with affordable housing. Okay, great. So we're moving pretty good. Senior center relocation study.
What about the strategic planning?
That falls off.
We took it out?
Yeah, we're
It's
gonna-
going into
We're gonna put it
operating.
in,
Okay.
operating.
Sorry, thank you, Richard, for bringing that up. So that brings our capital request this season down to 85. Between that and the town pier, 2 town pier requests being consolidated.
It's really senior center relocation. It's really like site design.
I put study in capital letters afterwards,
Yeah,
so that it's,
Yeah. we can bring it.
do you want site design or you want study?
well, I guess it depends on what we mean by study. They've already done their own study and they want to move it to Sherburne Commons.
Okay,
That's where they're identified places. So we need a site design for how it's all gonna fit in there.
okay, so site design?
I think so.
Okay,
And
that's cool.
sort of like needs, preliminary design of the building. That's all.
So site,
I
There's
put
meeting
all that
space in
under
the
site
design
design.
for that. Right?
That'd be-
There's
Yeah.
meeting space.
Yes,
so how about assessment and design?
yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, just so in the report, I got what I
Yeah,
need.
but I wanna say site design, because when people hear design, they think designing the building.
Ah,
and we're
right,
not there yet.
site assessment and design.
Drapes and
Sad,
treatment.
site assessment and design. Okay, great. We don't have a Rory on this. I would like to get one for our documentation. I think it's important that we follow our own procedures. We can collect those and give them to Rebecca after the fact, unless someone feels otherwise. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, and then, so basically, is there anyone unclear on what this is for? Okay, is there anyone who would prefer that it not go in the hopper? Okay, so that's in the hopper. Now we can go back to
Oh, the fleet,
the
right?
fleet. Okay. The one comment I did want to make is DPW operations facilities. I think it's important that we keep in mind, there's a couple $1 million in requests there. With respect to the annuals. And I would just say that if we get down to our final report and we're looking for things, you know, there are some $100,000 expenses, but there are some $500,000 expenses in here. And I'm not suggesting that we would make that a regular event, but with new staff on and the department expanding to fill needs, we may interface with the DPW director and see where, you know, are you really gonna spend 500 in 1, 2, 3, 4 categories or not? And if not, what do you think about 250? And then we have that money either to take off the bottom line or use somewhere else. So I'm not suggesting we make that determination now. I just wanted to call that out. Fleet management. These were all below our average and some well below our average. Do we want to discuss them? Do we feel that because they're below the average that they would be put into an out year? I think those are our two options.
Out here.
Anyone else?
I would agree with the out year.
Okay. So we're gonna move these all to out year.
What's your average? All of it?
That was the discussion so far.
Do we have any idea of if they had to rank them top to bottom? Like they say we really need this one and these other 5 could go to an out year? I mean, obviously the dollar amounts kind of play in, but
It'd be nice to know that.
it'd be nice to know that, 'cause
Yeah.
I mean,
If I were to vocalize, I would suggest the service response truck and the
passenger vehicle.
DPW director vehicles would be the 2 categories. Would be the DPW director's vehicles. I think that's 2 vehicles.
Yeah.
Based upon comments Rob had made, but
100 grand?
Might be
Yeah,
one.
I think it's 2.
2,
And
two.
our internal
Probably
discussion,
two.
we would probably approve 1.
1.
Like the vehicle Rob drives now is quite old. He's the maybe 2nd or 3rd department to go through that car.
Mm-hmm.
3rd maybe.
What are these vehicles anyway? The Expedition, Explorers?
Yeah.
He's got a
Expedition.
hybrid.
No.
Escape.
He's got a
Escape.
little guy.
He's got an Escape.
Escape.
Yeah, he's got the Escape.
So do you get Escapes or do you get Explorers?
Something with four-wheel
something
drive, I
else.
imagine, because he's
Something,
gonna be
yeah,
out in the
something-
snow.
I don't know what.
You know what
is.
they've chosen as their,
No, I don't.
yeah, on their list?
And then
Escape's fine.
the
What's
reason
wrong with that?
the reason I suggested the service response truck is the way Rob had described it. I mean, really, they're bringing
Yeah.
they're bringing that in house. They do have a full-time mechanic for the fleet, and there are still several vehicles out there that are in that need a help home sometimes, I think. So the service response truck could be useful there. I don't know that it's gonna get as much use, but I'm gonna defer to our DPW director on that. And then I think it's important if we're not gonna do these and we determined it was gonna be, just for the sake of discussion, the service response truck and 1 DPW vehicle for $200,000. I certainly agree that we should put back to the director what
More
his
important.
priorities are,
Yeah.
if there's a funding amount. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I think it's,
What's easier to do, put them in the hopper and get a priority list?
yeah, I would recommend that we in terms of proceeding, we would determine whether we think a vehicle's worthwhile.
Yeah.
And then we may give him the option. They're really two separate things.
Well, I would say a lot of that's based on the rankings from town as well.
Seems like town admin likes the idea of the trash compactor truck
But not by much.
More than the other vehicles.
Yeah.
more than everything else.
Are there thoughts on how to approach that? Is it just,
I agree with
Let me,
that.
is trash compactor truck, is that an absolute,
Didn't
is that,
we
are they
just get
replacing?
one?
It's the one we have now.
I thought we
Yeah,
just got one.
We know.
They just got a small, new one like a few years ago.
Yeah,
Small one.
Yeah, and
we
it's-
have to, I'd have
Peter, I see you
Sure.
thinking over there. I'm
What do
just
you-
waiting for you
Yeah.
to speak up.
I
Give us
guess
some
I would
help.
say this, I find it hard to believe that we, through the fleet management at DPW, only have 9 vehicles. And it looks like this is the only section that has replacement schedule checked off. So my assumption, my professional assumption is that we're just weighing in on 9 of how many other vehicles, because there's nothing in out years.
Mhm.
So we're making a decision sort of in the blind, because there's gotta be other vehicles that are out there that we don't see on this schedule.
Mhm.
So if we ask him to itemize based on the significance and need, we're not shown the whole picture, so it's very difficult for us to make a decision.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Except I think that Rob McNeil is very credible, and I'll support probably 80% of this list.
Mhm. So I think your point about not knowing in front of us with this,
Because the fear may be,
What the
maybe some of
outliers
us
are.
said the fear, well, gosh, we can't put any of these vehicles in cold storage. It's sitting in the elements, so why should we invest? Which is really, that's a valid.
my concern is we don't have a facility out there, and it is right on Long Pond, and it is in Nantucket,
And that
and
is
it's salt
fierce
laden
wind.
air, and it's fierce wind, and we're putting money into these new vehicles that are gonna be coated with the salt, and
Yeah.
so that's my concern with it. I'm the same place I was with the sewer on this, with respect to equipment, that they're trying to have the equipment they need to do the job efficiently, which I believe we can support. I just think this year, maybe it's on a prioritization basis. And then we look at, again, as we did earlier this season, what Rob has in his out years, because he did include in the Planet his other vehicles, I believe. Some of them are included in
I think he
there.
also included a very large Excel spreadsheet reset from last year.
Yeah.
The whole vehicle
I
lot?
think it included the entire vehicle list.
I think
Yeah.
you're right. I think
Or
you're
the
right.
majority of the vehicle list that DPW maintained.
So we need to do that.
Can
I
I
don't
put somebody
disagree.
on the spot? Maybe somebody's not in the room. But as an operations manager, when we have an issue with 2 departments, doesn't matter, we won't even get specific. There's 2 departments and we have a piece of equipment that's owned by the town, not by the department. Who plays Solomon and decides who gets that piece of town-owned equipment?
well, it depends on what it's for.
Do you want me to get
Depends on-
specific? Let's say we have a loader, DPW and
You're
sewer
talking
both
about
want to
this,
use the
I was
lower,
just thinking
loader.
about that.
Well, I knew what you were
Figure it
talking
out.
about.
And it works?
For the most part. I mean,
Yeah,
every now
because-
and then there's a conflicting need, I guess.
So
but they're
let's
not
get
using it
more-
24/7, each of them.
Let's say it's something they can't figure out. Who decides what happens?
I guess I do.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
But the other thing is, it's not always exactly that simple because they are different funded.
I understand we're dealing with people.
Well, it's not just that though.
But
It's a-
sharing
it's a
is what you're
different-
talking about.
Yeah, because I mean, I love, for example,
Priority
I
share.
can focus on other things at
That's
once,
easy.
hopefully. I like the fire chief and his mechanic, and I like to have buildings that we don't have, but buildings we may have in some departments. And I like sharing of mechanical, and I like sharing of a piece of equipment that if you only use it 10 hours a year and you need it for 50, well, then you do a schedule.
Well, the
you know,
thing with the
things-
DPW loader, I guarantee you, the biggest issue is they drive it
And
down
no one
the
has
road a lot.
blinders on,
And the
you know?
and the sewer one doesn't have to do that. Stays out
Stays
there.
on site.
Just like I have a major concern sitting here thinking, and I haven't talked a lot today. It really depends on the select board's strategic plan on our investment in our buildings, because I'm still seeing us build a great fiefdom of buildings, and I think it's asinine for our community to continue to go forward on, and I'm gonna make a hypocrite of myself, on a plan where your strategic plan on buildings may just completely change things and change what we've decided on here. I think it's ridiculous to have to look at a chart to figure out where we're gonna meet when we own all these buildings.
We don't
It just,
really
it's
own this one.
it's for me, I sit here and I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
And I think I'm gonna really pick
Well, I'm
on
being
select board.
nice about
I think
this,
you
but
guys are
look
over
at
your
it.
head. I really do. I mean, I think we're in the same boat. I think we're over our head because there's so much that we need to do.
You're looking at, you know what's funny, you're looking
Well,
at.
but we made a
I get-
recommendation on
I get
this,
what you're
and we're
saying.
gonna reaffirm the recommendation on this, and I don't wanna bring it up, but I'm gonna,
No,
is this, we.
I want to be part of
There needs to
that
be,
change.
there needs to be a concerted, comprehensive way for the town to manage its capital assets. Part of that is the facilities, and I'm not talking about facilities that exist, I'm talking about facility planning. Planning for the dirt, all the fixed asset, whether it's dirt or improvement, how does it fit a plan? The town admin and finance director just, we're going through incredible growing pains, and they need a second to breathe so we can do more better, largely with what we have, by planning. And that's what I was very tangentially referring to when I mentioned planning earlier, because that's just that's like just scratching the film off the lottery ticket. This type of planning, there's more planning that needs to be done, and town resources need to be put into it. I understand your frustration. I don't disagree with it. I mean, I'm trying to hold this whole thing together, thinking like you do with background in operations management, and there's so many pieces missing, but my hope is that we're gonna get there. And in the meantime, we're gonna, we just gotta duct tape it and do the best we can without spending money that's then a sunk cost that's we're gonna rip up and pave over, or rip up and put another building on. Does that, I don't know if that's helpful, but,
No, it is helpful.
okay. All right,
Sorry, I have another meeting to go to.
thanks, Libby.
I won't be at that meeting. The next one, sorry.
Me either.
I don't know what,
I'm not gonna be there either.
my meeting's a landfill meeting.
I'm not gonna be there.
Oh, that's when you are.
And
going.
it,
I wish
that
I
was
was on that one.
professional, my comments, not anything.
Peter,
Thank you.
can I say something to
I
you?
would never build a complex like this.
You're-
Can we,
You're thinking like
Do
I
you-
do with the whole like
I know you
final
know.
resting place mindset. Okay, this is it. Like, there's people that think that this building is like gonna have a useful life. We just got here. Like, they're already going, well, 2072, we're gonna need this building to be demolished. I mean, I know where you're going. I have an issue with Nantucket. Why is the dump in Nantucket? Just because Andy Lewis had it out there. We're driving on Prospect with 62-foot trucks all day, like going to Nantucket, like hello.
We talked about it.
But like the Cozart stuff, to me, is the right plan. And I'm not worried about the next superintendent because that plan is so good. There isn't an option. Where's he going to go? Tom Nevers? So that I'm not worried about. But I get what you mean. Then it gets into the whole, what's in our control? We couldn't control this building getting built. Couldn't do it. We can't control what the airport does. We can't really kind of control what the school does, really, kind of, sort
Well,
of.
then that gets to.
It's
that
weird.
gets
It's
to
very
the
difficult.
Top of the umbrella is who has that control? And I'm gonna look towards
I don't think it's
our
like
form of
that.
government.
No, it's, well, you're getting back into town meeting versus.
no,
What are you talking about?
he's talking about a centralized, I mean,
You're talking
forgive me,
about
but you're talking about
enterprise
planning,
versus-
centralized planning of all of our
Listen,
assets.
we built a brand new terminal in Hyannis in 1994 without ever even using the term fast ferry. And Fastboat came 2 years later.
Now,
Not one term Fastboat was ever brought up during that entire construction project.
I don't think we're
You
using,
just don't know what's coming sometimes.
I don't think we're using the term fast either. Christie, just a second.
Yep.
I'm
Matt,
just saying planning sometimes
No,
isn't
I know that,
easy.
I understand you think that way, but we part ways in that a little
Just
bit.
use an example.
I understand, but I part ways with you a little bit in that I agree with you if it comes to what are the future use requirements based upon the number of people visiting the island or population, things along those lines. But if we're trying to, if we're planning based upon current conditions we're in a deficit position in, and what, meeting space,
Yeah, that's a definite.
housing space, all these things that we're in a deficit in, we could be planning the solutions for those that are gonna take 3 to 5 years without even getting into some of these other things of, and more along the lines of what you're saying. We'll get there. It's, you know, it takes everybody's perspective, but it takes a little bit of motion. I think the select board are in a tough place, and I think it puts the community in a tough place. They're there for a 3-year term, I'll just say it.
It is.
And then what happens,
That's true.
you know, it should be a 5-year term maybe. You're there for a 3-year term because the cyclical nature of that office then turns the strategic plans into a reevaluation perhaps if you get 2 strong members voted in and they change the viewpoint of what was voted in for the previous 3 years. So it makes it difficult to make a long-term plan. But there's communities all over the place that plan their capital on a 10-year basis, and
That's what happened with centralization, where
Yeah.
this committee, I think Christie, you probably were on FinCom at the time, but the CAP committee had a centralization plan, and then it was the Board of Selectmen at that time that changed the whole thought process.
Yeah.
So this committee went backwards.
and the other
And now
thing,
we're doing it again, and I hope we don't go backwards again. But I see us building
well, I'm going to keep fighting that we don't go backwards because we need to be doing planning.
consolidation, as you say. If you consolidate your capital assets and your capital expenditures, and you can drive the bus, which is called operations. It's business 102.
Yeah. And then part of it is also bringing in the parties bottom up, sides in.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about the concept of congregational planning, so we had the NPDC, the FinCom, the town select board, admin at different levels and at different points in the timeline, department heads. So there's a regular scheduled interaction that's focused on what are the most important things to make Nantucket better for the community, to do more better with what we have. Anyways, Christie's been waiting very patiently.
I appreciate it. Can I just make a recommendation?
Yeah.
For fleet management, that we omit one of the director's vehicles, we omit the passenger vehicle, and we put everything else in the hopper.
What was the
I
thing
would
besides the
second that.
passenger vehicle? I'm sorry.
I would second that.
Just
So-
one director vehicle, not 2.
Oh,
Assuming
okay.
that it's 2.
Oh, because of the price, it's 2. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
put an Uber line.
So
item in
one
the
direct,
operating budget.
one director vehicle, and then the
Omit
rest
the
go in.
passenger vehicle.
Omit
Yeah.
the passenger.
and
Is that,
just-
real quick, the sweeper, so we had 160 already requested on that, and then we're requesting another 250?
This is so
that-
I think this is so
Yeah.
they have 2.
So is that just going to buy 2 sweepers instead of
No,
one now?
they have a new one. I think they want to have 2. They only have
Yeah.
1. I
Yeah.
think we got that explanation
This
They
is
have-
this year.
Because they have more than one guy that can drive those sweepers, so I think they are just pretty overwhelmed by it.
But
But
so the prior approved 160,000, are we asking for another 250,000 on top of that
Yes.
160? So is that, I mean, why did it more than double in?
That may be one that we bought prior. I'm not sure.
The
I know it
160?
doesn't have an expended to date in here, but that may.
Okay,
They got some money out of another, I don't even want to bring that up.
right. So Rob
They
submitted.
do have a new street sweeper. I think they want to have
Yeah.
2.
yeah,
Rob-
just making sure
One way
we're
or the
not
other.
looking at a $400,000 street sweeper.
No, Rob submitted a SIP request form
Yeah.
for an additional street sweeper,
Okay.
as opposed to a supplement. So good question. Okay, so we have everything but the passenger vehicle and one of the DPW vehicles in the suggested to go into the hopper.
Yep.
I just say, you know, I'm not going to vote no, but I am concerned that we're putting brand new vehicles out there
I mean,
without having a space to house them.
Don't they
at
take them
all.
home?
No, not like the
The
trash
loader,
compactor and the
Oh,
excavator.
I think that stuff's inside buildings.
No, they're not
During hazmat day.
these
Not.
numbers. But it's, I'm not trying to
Everything's
dissuade
outside,
anyone. I'm
that's
just
all.
saying. I want to be on the record that I think if we're going to put rolling stock out there, it needs to be undercover. Having said, anyone who would like to, anyone who's not in favor of the motion. Sorry, I'm losing track here. I haven't had enough coffee. Okay, so those are gonna go in the hopper as suggested by Mr. Kickham.
We still have, I mean, another opportunity to.
Yeah, and
to
we can take a
omit
bite.
Or review if something
Yeah.
comes up.
Yeah.
He does have some out-year replacements scheduled.
Yeah.
Not for every one of them, but.
Which would
Yeah.
be good to
So there's the one there.
have somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice to know which vehicles they won't have to be able to use next year, or 2 years from now.
Yeah,
you know?
yes, and we reviewed those during his visit. Unfortunately, you weren't able to attend. Okay, so we have, I think I got a pretty good direction here, guys. What will happen next is I will meet with Brian. I'll fill this in, meet with Brian. Through finance, we'll get it updated, and we'll get you a copy so you know what final numbers are. And then we'll get a final on the funding sources, and those will be included and sent out to you for your review. And then if anyone sees anything that they find something is not the way you thought it was gonna be, look, the big ticket swings are the capping the cells and the L8. I mean, that represents $20 million. But if you see something else, please get back through Brian, so we're not communicating directly in violation of open meeting. Because,
So will we have a list of hopper items, a separate document?
yeah, you're gonna have this, and it's gonna have what the capital committee dollar recommendation is, and a total per department and overall by general fund and enterprise funds. And then the funding sources, preliminary. And you'll have that to review, and it will be the basis for writing the report. So if there's a concern, I would need to know about it. And I think what will happen is, through the process of infilling this information with Brian, we'll identify, I mean, basically, we're looking at 100, I mean, to be clear, we're looking at almost $102 million if everything happened. We know that, at the risk of repeating myself, either capping cells or the unfilled online landfill mining is gonna drop out. We don't know about the L8. So those are the swing items. Otherwise, that's our number. When we go through the funding sources review, if it turns out that something is just not gonna work with our town numbers, we have our free cash of 9 million, we're looking at 5 to 6 million. The rest is either gonna be capital exclusion, a debt exclusion, whatever. Then we'll put together a quick report so you're aware of it. But otherwise, I anticipate these are what we're gonna be working forward with.
Okay.
Does that? I know, I need a little coffee. Okay, are these
That is
one for everyone?
Yes, and I actually have them. Christy and Jason gave me theirs, so
This is extra.
So these are extra, okay,
Yep.
great. So unless, does anyone have any comments, concerns? All right, so we're gonna ask for a date of next meeting will be to be determined. We'll give you all as much notice as possible.
Is there any meeting to review,
Print that side.
discussing about
Is that
the
possible?
Rebecca,
reforms that are for any,
Yeah.
any just creative or
When you do the spreadsheet.
We're
Yeah.
gonna do, we'll recap the final Rories at our next meeting
Pay it
and
forward.
review the draft report.
Find the oldest guy you know and teach him how to do
Yeah,
it.
I'm gonna
light came on when you showed me that.
I have some thoughts on this
which
that-
Oh, yeah.
Little-
not
that I
really
thought
got
might
paper
have
in our
improvements.
office.
Oh, in terms of this, we'll take that up in our after action
That's
report,
George W.
after the budgeting season.
This?
I
Yeah.
will be actually
Technology.
Yeah,
put
definitely.
in for some of that.
All right, guys,
Good.
thank you.
So moved.
Excellent. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Christmas. Good New
Are we
Year.
done this week? There's no more meetings?
I'm hoping we're not gonna see you guys until after the new year, but I have to reserve the right to call a meeting if we find something we need to address. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice and nice. Hey, hang tight, I wanna talk to you soon.
Sure.